When you are a minority, you are a smaller part. And obviously, when you're the smaller part, you will face unique challenges, because then it means that your needs are not prioritized, because you don't have the kind of numbers to lobby for your needs to really be centralized as they should. What you will get at best is what we have here in America, which is just token overtures. A token overture is when somebody basically tells you, here, you can have that. And it's usually just to keep you quiet. Is usually just to keep you quiet. So the first dream that I will be talking about is the fact that, and this dates back to slavery time. This is what actually stopped me from looking too deeply into slavery. If you look too deeply into slavery, you will just find some things that will ruin your brain, ruin your life, ruin your ability to really be at peace. The first dream that I had in 2017 was about eating Black people. So in this dream, it was just a room. I spoke of this before, but here we go. It was a room that was a dryer. If you are in the South, you like smoking barbecue, you like smoking your own bacon, you like smoking whatever you like to smoke, your sausages, jerky, and things like that, then you know what a dryer is. So it was a dryer, but it's not like the kind that people just make out of an old drum and things like that. It was a whole room that was like a sauna, but way, way worse, because the heat in that room was unbelievable. And God put me in that room, and the heat was not affecting me because I was not physically there. I was simply put into the room to observe what was happening. And this is a room that was in a facility. So the facility had this room that was a drying room. And I said that in that room, I saw about 40 Black adults, male and female. They were completely naked, and they were at the end of their lives by reason of being dried alive. They were being dried for the chemical compound that is inside their bodies that is known as melanin. Melanin is the thing that makes objects black or brown. Melanin is what springs from the hair follicles to give you brunette, black, or dark brown hair. Melanin is the thing that is inside the eyes of people who are very black-eyed, very brown-eyed, but there's even traces of melanin in people who have other eye colors. It's just less. Everybody has melanin, whether you are Polynesian, whether you are Japanese, whether you are white, whether you are Black. Everybody has melanin, but melanin exists in its highest concentrations in Black people. Whether they're Israel or not Israel, Black people have the highest concentrations of melanin. That is what gives them their distinctive features. That is what gives them the kind of hair that they have and things like that. So when you are a person that has high concentrations of melanin, I'm not the melanin expert, but the little that I know, because God will always encourage me to get the better understanding of the things that he showed me, and that dream repulsed me so much that I didn't even want to know anything about it for a long time. But he would always say, and God always tells me this, gaze at the truth, because when you gaze at the truth, truth becomes reflected in you. Many of you who come here, you admit that the things you hear are hard, but you still come back. You're not coming back because of me and the way I express things particularly. You're coming back because the truth is addictive. In a society, in a world, in a nation, and in a global time where lies are the current currency, people come here to be disabused of falsehood. You come here because God has set a wire brush that, if you can tolerate it, will scrub off decades of lies off the walls of your house and take it back to cement so that he can give you a brand new paint job called the truth. So melanin in its highest concentration keeps people very young. Melanin can be found in food such as the darkest kinds of seaweed. So I'm not just talking about kelp. I'm talking about the seaweed that is dark, 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 dark green. And it's highly consumed in Asia. And then you look at them and they don't age. It's not because it's coming from their skin. They're getting it from a lot of the things that they eat. But in us who are black, brown, and the different shades, it is inside just naturally as a deposit. Melanin keeps you young looking. It keeps you young looking. It keeps you young feeling. It helps greatly in the healing of wounds and in recovery stages from sickness and diseases. In other words, it is a very precious regenerative compound that, if you go and look online, is more valuable per gram or per whatever they sell it than gold. Melanin carries a higher purchase price, let's say per gram, than a gram of gold. That's how precious it is. Scientists cannot deny what it does. And the other thing is to let you know that it's not the Khazars, okay, who are the original Jews, is that melanin kicks up its production from sun. It kicks up its production from being exposed to the sun. The more sun you get, the more exposure that you get, this thing kicks up its production, increasing in your body, increasing in your blood flow. So now you understand what it is. At the time I had the dream, I had no clue why those 40 men and women were stark naked, fighting for the last of their lives in a dryer. It was worse than a sauna. In a sauna, you have the thing with the cup, and then you can pour water on the rocks, and then what the water and the rocks do is they release steam, and then it kind of abates a little bit the heat in there. Dry heat is deadly. Dry heat is something. And so when God explained this dream to me later, the black people that I saw, the men and women, there were no children in that room. Okay, so there were no children in that room. They were dying. There was a huge slab there, and some of them were just strewn across the slab. Some of them had already died. In the dream, when God put me in the room, a lot of them were crowded by the door. A lot of them were crowded by the door, and they were weakly, just weakly rubbing at the door. The door had a very thick seal at the bottom so that none of the heat could escape. Nobody was getting out of that room, okay? There was nobody getting out of that room. The room could only be opened from the outside, not from the inside. And the heat had killed them. Melanin is alive while we are alive. We're not like the plants. They can keep their deposits of melanin even when you pluck them and prepare them. And that's why seaweed and the skin of eggplant will still keep its properties. When you consume them, they will still be beneficial to you. But the melanin inside people is very different. And God made me to understand that those people in that room were drying out for a reason. Reason is this: if you shoot a black man, you just shoot him abruptly and then he dies. And you perhaps want to eat him. The melanin in him will not benefit you. At the moment of such a violent death, the melanin kind of spoils, so to speak. I cannot explain it because I don't have any kind of medical degree or anything, but I will just give it to you the way my brain understood it. If you shoot a person, if a person dies a violent death, if a person just dies suddenly like that, and there are explosions of all the chemicals, all the fear, all the everything that gets released, when you die suddenly or you die agonizingly, the melanin is ruined. It is no good. It cannot be consumed. Melanin is consumed by certain populations in this nation of America who are unmelanated, and it is not only consumed here, but it is a delicacy around the world to people who can afford it, because it is a life-giving chemical. It's a renewal thing. If you want to just look 31 forever and you're 87, then that's the thing to take in tablet form, apparently. I don't know if they have it in liquid form. Or even worse, as they used to do in slavery, you can just eat the person like jerky. So that is what these black people were doing in there. In America, if you're wondering where your children are going, if you're wondering why there are Amber Alerts and things like that, and you are finding such a high proportion of black and Latino people going missing, which you can find confirmed in the prophecy that is called 19 Minutes to Human Trafficking. In that prophecy, God said to me that even though human trafficking and kidnapping and killing of people takes place across all the races, by far the races that you will find going missing in higher proportions, which is very odd considering that they're the smaller proportions of the population, are black people and Latino people, and also Native people. But their stats are barely ever reported because in America, they're just treated as shadow people, like they don't exist. So Those people in that room, those 40 men and women, no kids, were people who had been caught, basically snatched off the street because they were walking with Beats by Dre on their head, or they went to parties and got drunk and got into what they thought was their Uber, and it was actually one of these trafficking van things pretending to be their Uber. And so they were being dried. God was telling me that they were being dried because when a person is killed slowly, then just the way you dry meat and all the juices bubble inside the meat, flavoring it and keeping it well made, is the same way when you dry people, melanin is preserved in a pristine form. And then when you carve up, we are meat. That's all we are. What makes us special is the life in us, elocution, the ability to speak, the ability to create, which is reflective of God himself, who is creator, and the spirit of God dwelling in us. But when you take that life away, we are just meat. So they were drying the people like meat so they could get the melanin in top form. And that particular form of melanin was not going to be extracted like liquid or extracted like pills. The people were going to be made into jerky to keep those who need melanin youthful. So whether you're an economics major or not, you understand supply and demand, don't you? If there's a demand for something, that demand must be supplied from somewhere. So as long as you know these things, then I guess late night 4 a.m. partying will become something that you need to revisit with wisdom. Maybe going out with the girlies and falling down drunk isn't quite the flex as you think it is, considering the climate that surrounds us in these end times. So that is the first thing that God showed me just out of the blue one day in 2017. That people eat people here. They eat babies here. I will never stop saying it. You should repeat it to yourself sometimes when I say it. They eat babies. You should actually let it enter into your heart that the people who wear onesies can be boiled or can be slaughtered and consumed raw in a civilized nation that gave the world Siri. The second dream from 2017, this is going to be a long video. The second dream from 2017 is about the fact that slave hunting still goes on in this day. To kick this off, you can check the news and you will find that a white couple was recently caught and indicted for keeping 3 black children that they adopted out of the system for quite a number of years as slaves. I'm not saying slaves metaphorically. I'm saying actually making the children work in the fields for them. Little children, none of them were 18 or 19 years old. They were kids. And what's more, they had been held as slaves for years. So they had grown up in that. And this couple had them and made them do all the labor and then made them live in a shed outside on the property. So I'm not even going to say anything about the neighbors who can't not have seen those children, can't not have seen those little ones. It's absolutely impossible. Those children were working for those people for some X number of years. They were being kept in a shed that had no lights. It had no plumbing. It had no nothing. And the police officers are on record by saying that when they found the children, the state of their hygiene was beyond deplorable. It was beyond shocking. You will also know that historically here in the United States, even though the Emancipation Proclamation was made in some areas of the United States more than a decade past, where people did not inform their slaves that they were actually free. I think there is one place where the people didn't know until about the 70s or some really modern time. The slaves on the plantation didn't actually know that America had been free for some decades. They were not told. They were still being enslaved. And so with that as a preamble, that certain things are still happening here, even though everyone likes to act like it's all equal and moderate. It is not. God showed me in that same year, 2017, that black people are still hunted here in many parts of the United States for sport. And what you will do is that you will catch a person and then you will take them to a remote area of a farm or something like that. And then you will sort of let them loose like Brer Rabbit And then you will tell them, run, run, run as fast as you can. I will catch you because I'm the gingerbread man. And so the dream that I had was I found myself suddenly standing in the back of a barn. It's a very big barn, affluent barn, not your medium-sized barn. This is a big, cavernous barn. And I was standing right at the back of the barn in shadow. And at the front of the barn doors were open. So that was in bright sunlight. And there were 3 men standing there. It was 2 men that were white and 1 man that was black. And the 2 men were dressed like farmers. They were dressed, they had farmer garb, and they both had long rifles. You know the kind of gun? There's a gun that you can crack it open, right? So when you crack the gun open, then it's in this collapsed state. Like half the gun is hanging down and the other half is hanging that way with a wood barrel or something like that. So they had those kind of guns, but the guns were not cracked. They were in a long straight, right? And then there was a black man, and the black man clearly was not a farm black man, right? He was a city black man because he was wearing work pants and shiny shoes, very shiny shoes, and a crisp white shirt. And he was so bewildered when I saw them. He was so confused that at first it was just pure confusion with no fear. So the 2 men were trying to explain to this black man that they want the black man to run off into the nearby forest, which is just next to the farm, and they will give him a head start, and then they're going to chase him. And the man was simply not comprehending it. He was just not comprehending. First of all, I could see that either this man was invited to the farm for a job interview, or they stole this man from the city and brought him to this place. And then now they were telling him that they need him to run. And the man was just not understanding. And he was saying, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? And they were saying, no, you got to understand, fella. Run. And then we're going to give you like an hour, 2 hours, right? Run off into them woods over there. And then we're going to, we're going to come get you. And so this man was not understanding it. And they were just chuckling and trying to tell him that they wanted him to run. So by the time they got to the 3rd retelling of telling this man that they wanted him to get a head start into the woods, this is when realization began to creep into this man's head. I think this man was just in shock that he was being told in modern times where we have telephones and TVs that he was going to be hunted and that he was going to get a 2-hour head start, the best that he can, in those city shoes that we all know have no grip and can't run for anything. They told him to run. And so when he finally understood, he looked at them, he realized what was happening. He realized that they were not joking. And then he turned, believing them, and tried to flee. And the minute he got a few steps off, one person just pulled up the gun with one hand and just shot him, just shot him in the back, and he fell and he went sprawling. That is one dream. And then I think in 2021 or 2022, I had a second dream where God showed me that they would make black people naked. They would gather a big bunch of them and make them completely naked and take them out to the woods and have night hunts. So when I made that prophecy, a lot of people were protesting and saying, no, the elites do this and they do this to everyone. And I said, yes, the elites do this. And I have prophesied that they do this in another prophecy as a group. And now I'm making the specific prophecy. And so can you please pipe down and allow me to speak what God has shown me? And so God showed me specifically that they will get black people and they will carry them out there. And the way that God showed me was the death of this very heavy set black man. Okay, that man never had a chance of a snowflake in summer. They gathered them. And then they told them, it was at nighttime and they were in some forest. And then they told them to run. And then, they were making those whoops, sounds of excitement, because this is a hunt. Okay, this is a hunt. And I saw how this one black man died. He was running and he was so heavy set. He wasn't getting anywhere. And so he was one of the first people to die in this, different type of Hunger Games. They shot him with a bullet that does something extraordinary. I think the bullet goes, and then when it gets in you, it just goes. So it's a strange kind of bullet that has, I don't know, it has claws or something. It's a very damaging bullet, what I saw. And God was telling me that, you see this bullet, Celestial, is very expensive. And so this bullet is never used in practice runs, because this bullet can even bring down big deer because of how damaging it is. And I saw, God let me see how the bullet worked. The bullet went into the man and then it opened up. And then when it came out, because of velocity, it brought so much of that man out. He had such a big, big hole in him. And then when he fell, he was just bleeding in the grass, and God brought the camera very close, and I just watched life go out of that man's eyes until he was just still. And then I said that a very expensive pair of boots that I then learned from that dream are called duck boots, because I went online looking for boots. I just went online to look at boots, and then I finally found duck boots have a very nice kind of design. They kind of have a little uptick and then they curve, like the shoe has a bit of an uptick and then it curves, and the front part is all rubbery. And the nicer ones are two-tone, so they can be navy blue and tan, or they can be white and, army green. And I found the boots so curious that I just wanted to know what type of shoe is that hunts people in the middle of the night. And that is where I learned that this shoe is called a duck boot. And so a pair of duck boots came and kicked the man in his big belly and said, "There's a big fella, ain't he?" And then they laughed, and then they moved on. So that is the second dream of the particular challenges that are faced by people here in the United States. I don't know that they are hunting other Israelites like this. So Judah, you really need to open your ears, and you need to be, a little smarter and a little bit more aware than you currently are about life. The third dream, I've spoken about this dream. I think I spoke about this dream not even 2 days ago when I was speaking of the Yehudim prophecy, was the dream of blood bank blood. And I saw that blood is collected here in America for sure. And the reason that there's such a big drive for blood, we need this blood for the infants. We need this blood for the AB people. They don't have any blood. Never am I a denier of medical science. Okay, my dad's a doctor, career doctor. So never am I saying that blood is not necessary, but the particular taste for blood in America is because America has altars. America has altars, sacrificial altars, spiritual altars, satanic altars, synagogue altars that need to be fed. And the different types of blood are used for different things. There's need for baby's blood. There's need for virgin's blood. You're listening to this in 2024, but at the same time, as you listen to this prophecy that is called Incoming Remembrances, God is taking Israel back to look at many things of the past and also of the present and of the future. A remembrance is basically a walk down memory lane. I told you that you can't really occupy your place in the world. You can't really hold your place in the world steady, no matter who you are, unless you know who you come from and what the past was. Even if your past was one of abuse, victory comes from conquering that abuse so that you can stand tall in the truth that, yes, that did happen, but it doesn't have to be my complete story. I can still reshape the time in front, the time that I have left, for I am not just an abuse victim. I am so much more than that bitter moment in time. And so this blood here that America pushes for in its various designations is because America has a lot of things to use blood for that have nothing to do with saving lives and the SOS Children's Village. And we just need to be aware of that as a society. Truth is needed in this society. I don't know what the pastors are doing, but then I am not a pastor. I am the Lord's servant here, bringing forth the truths that have been buried under the rug, because before America is judged for her sin, all of America's crimes must be laid in front of her. If America has a lawyer, that person needs to stand up, open a channel, and start arguing for her right away, because I am here on the Lord's request to read out the charges. This is an inquest, reading out the charges, and then God will give the judgments after that. And so this blood that comes from the blood bank, I had a dream. And in that dream, I saw a very strange setup, and I was viewing it from, I would say, a fair enough distance. Okay. I was viewing it from a fair enough distance, and it basically looked like a very long kiosk on a beach that was covered. So you know how kiosks are. It will have a roof, and it will have sometimes, usually a cement slab. And then sometimes they put a little bit of branding around it. When you go to a fair, then you can look and say, oh, okay, I can see your stand. I see what it is. This thing was more like it's kind of like a bus stop, but without seats. Just a long building. So just imagine a long building that doesn't have sides. It just has pillars, every couple of things to keep the roof off. It's got a roof and it's got a cement base. And it's on the beach, not too close to the water. So if you look through it, you can look right through it and see the sea. You can see the sea, you can see people splashing and stuff like that. And I was at a very private resort. I did not see any people of color at that resort. I only saw older white people at that resort. What was happening is, in this long kiosk, the first station was where you got your cup. You pick up a cup, and you also picked up a bag of blood. This is the blood that people are giving at the hospital. So the blood was still in the blood bags, okay? So at the first kiosk, grab a bag of blood, and you also would grab a cup. A cup. I don't know if it's a NutriBullet cup or it's just a normal cup. But then what you would do is you would get to the second station, and there, workers were there. And the workers look exactly the way these boys that work at the tennis games look. You know, they all have the nice golf shirt, and then they have the shorts that come up to the knee, and, you know, socks and sneakers. Neat boys, like they're doing internships. So these are all younger men. Let's say 19, 23, something like that. Younger men. You would come up to where these younger men in the middle station, there were about 4 or 5 of them. So there was a little bit of a line. The older people would come up to the boys, and then they would hand over the blood. And then the boys would take the blood and pour it into a blender, and then add a fruit that I said may have been dragon fruit, because whatever the effect of this fruit was, the only fruit that I know with a gray inside is the dragon fruit. The dragon fruit is pink on the outside. Some of them are yellow on the outside, but inside the fruit is gray with many seeds. That is what the fruit that they would grab and scoop out looked like. So they would grab 1 or 2 of them at your preference, and they would pour the blood into the blender, and then pour this fruit with seeds into the blender, and then just put it up and give it a nice 1-minute blend. And then I said, for some reason, once the blood got into that gray fruit, the smoothie was not red anymore. It was just gray, which I didn't understand because blood colors everything. But with that fruit, the smoothie went gray, but not red. And then they would pour the mix into the cup and then put a cap on it and put a straw in it. And then the older person would start sipping and then go off to the third station. I don't know what they were doing at the third station because God was showing me the first 2 stations. And I was seeing that in this resort, people were preserving life. People were staying alive off of blood bank blood. And the Lord was telling me that is why there will never be a rest from asking people to donate blood in this country, because that blood actually has a job to do and people are consuming it raw. Now, if you are a student of the Bible and you're not just a person who talks silly things and says that the Old Testament is not for today, the Old Testament is forever. God said that his whole word would never pass away. Then you will know that one of the cardinal rules for God in terms of consumption is not to eat blood. So Israel, you're not supposed to be out there talking about super rare, light rare, and this rare and that rare. There's not supposed to be any kind of internal juices swimming around on the food that you get. Talking about it's seared on the outside, then you cut it, and then inside the beef is like, hello, Bob, how are you? It's still talking. That's how raw it is. God said to not eat anything with the blood still in it, because he said the life is in the blood. The life is in the blood. And so you're seeing here, right, how one of God's primary key rules is being broken, that he doesn't want us to consume blood in our food. And so that is the 3 dreams that point to cardinal dangers in the United States. Some of you may have never heard these things before. You may be balking in your spirits, but then that's because you really think that you live in a country that just, you know, it's just a home of love and baseball, and nothing could be further from the truth. There are heinous things happening behind the curtain here, and everyone who lives here, except of course the people who are doing it, they already know, but everyone ought to know this. Everyone ought to know this. And I don't want to see any comments of not everyone does this. When did you last have access in your normal life to someone in a dryer room? to dry human beings and eat them. Let's not have this juvenile understanding of the things I'm speaking here, because this stuff takes a lot of time and a lot of virtue out of my spirit. I'm not sitting here to pass the time. I'm not looking for a listening audience. I'm telling you what goes on behind the curtain. So no matter what skin color you are, you can know what's behind the curtain. Behind the curtain of America, there is a deadly beast at work. Satan is above that beast, telling it what to do and who to eat. And that beast happens to like a certain type of meal. So can we please just allow God to say what he has to say? I cannot be the only person who knows these things. We will all know it together. And you that wants to go to embassies around the world and come here and go missing. That's all I can say to you. Go get a visa and come here and go missing, especially since you're a tourist.